Session. I have, but first, before we start, Councilor Driscoll will not be here today because he's at jury duty, so he is excused. I have item 8, and that will be withdrawn. Councilor.
Thank you. I have item number 9, and that item is ready.
Thank you. Councilor Green.
Hey, Madam President. So item 10, I did get an email from Jen Tiff. Frank, do you want to talk about this, or I don't know if Jen's coming?
Councilor, just so you know, because you indicated you're having a committee meeting, the legislation is not ready.
I don't think that's, I think it's a different one. This,
Okay, all right, sorry.
I'm happy to answer any questions that may remain after Jen's memo. She is on vacation, so I'm happy to try and do my best Jen Tift imitation.
So, I mean, the biggest thing I think in her memo, the biggest piece of this has been the location that Microsoft had indicated they were open to starting in Syracuse, and obviously we haven't had progress on that part of it yet. And I think in her memo, it outlined that there was a meeting in November and that would be discussed then. And for me, I mean, I don't want to speak for everyone else, but I would like to see a more definitive answer. Is this something Microsoft's still planning to do, or is it not? And I think that's important for me.
And I agree, and I don't think we have a definitive answer to that. As Jen, I think, indicated, their entire use of facilities and offices, their entire policy is under review because of COVID, and where they're going to put real offices and how they're going to work with that is entirely in flux. So we're trying to get a straight answer from them. We have reestablished conversations with them, but when and how we'll get that answer, I think, is wide open right now.
Do other people have questions on this item? I mean, for me, it's even if there were to be the way they set up their offices, and if it were to not be a physical location in Syracuse, if there were people that are working on the issues we talked about in the MOU remotely or from home, but that they're focused on Syracuse, like, that would be something that I'd be interested in as well, and I don't have a clear answer on that.
Yeah, I think that has been ongoing. So in particular, they've been working on the IT side of, as Jen indicates, with the around the data issues, particularly with the partnership with SU. That's been going on. It did hit some bumps in the road a few months ago, but Dave Proack and the API team have been working with Microsoft pretty extensively on that. The economic development has not been as straightforward as we would have liked, but Jen is confident that they will continue to work with us. Whether there's going to be a physical presence, I think, is the open question. Not that they have a continued commitment to it, and certainly we'll continue to update the council as what that exactly is going to look like in the long run. But again, the whether or not they're going to establish a physical presence, I think, is what's open.
I guess for me, I would want to see what are they still committed to doing, what are they not committed to doing. And I think the memo she laid out kind of is a little ambiguous where, you know, you're saying things are not started yet, but it's not clear to me, are they not started because they're never happening, or are they going to happen when we meet in November? I think that's what I want to know.
Yeah, I agree, Councilor. It is absolutely ambiguous because we don't know the answers from Microsoft yet. How they're going to reconfigure the way they do business is still very much up in the air. I guess to bring it back to the matter at hand, while the two are clearly related because they're both Microsoft, the use of Microsoft Office 365 from a cybersecurity standpoint is a little bit different than the economic development relationship.
I do understand that, but it's also been 2 years and we don't have a clear answer. So if there were ever to be a time to say, can you provide clarity about your commitment to Syracuse, this to me is the time to.
They do not, while those of us sitting on the sidelines would see that as being reasonable, Microsoft doesn't. Microsoft sees this as two completely different parts of the company, and they see no connection to the two whatsoever.
But it is, I mean, again, this is something that we are not doing an RFP for, right? I mean, and so this is.
I'm sorry?
This is an item we're not doing an RFP for.
We're not doing an RFP because frankly, there's no one else who can meet it. Without going through the cost of changing the city from a Microsoft Office to any other vendor, which would likely be Google, would be astronomical. So unfortunately, because we've long since made the commitment to being a Microsoft Office platform city decades ago, I would honestly say there's really no other vendor possible. So that's why we chose not to do an RFP.
I just have a brief question on that. Do they not sell the, because from my understanding, there's two separate systems going on here, right? So there is the application side, right, in which, so you're looking to update the Microsoft applications, which you are alleging that are out of date, right? But then there is also the email server side, which we are currently hosting ourselves. Is that correct?
They're really intertwined now. Microsoft,
in a lot of ways, right,
Microsoft
sure.
365 is.
Right, but do they also, but I guess where I'm getting with this is it not possible to just purchase the updates for the applications instead of moving to a complete Office 365 system?
There are some possibilities where, and we are doing that. We're not, every user will not get the full suite of applications.
No, I understand. I guess what I'm saying is that there the ability to have a standalone system. So we currently just have Microsoft apps, right, as well as our own independent email operation, right? That's fair? Yeah, that's, I think that's mostly fair. So then what I'm asking then, would there not be the ability to simply purchase upgrades for the apps and continue using our own email servers?
It would be exceedingly difficult to do that. The two are very, in the current way that Microsoft does business, it is primarily subscription and cloud-based. It is very difficult to upgrade on-prem now, on-premise.
Okay. And
It's not, I don't want to tell you that it is impossible. It is exceedingly difficult and probably beyond our financial means.
sure. And then also you mentioned that some of the emphasis behind this is cybersecurity. Are you aware of any current threats or the amount of threats, cybersecurity threats that the city has faced, let's say over the last year?
I'd be happy to talk about that in executive session.
That's all I have.
Thank you. So I think I do want to get some more clarity on the economic development piece of it. So I'm going to hold this, and then we may wrap it into a committee meeting once we get those answers back.
Okay, Council.
The next item is item 11, which is the Syracuse University agreement, which will also have its own committee meeting. And then item 12 is a correction of the tax rolls, which is ready unless there's any questions from councilors. Thank you, Madam President.
Councilor Paniagua.
Good afternoon. I have items 13 to 15. These items are ready unless there's any more comments from my colleagues. If not, they are ready. Thank you.
Councilor Carney.
Thank you, Madam President. I have items 16 through 33. Those are all ready based on our last meeting, unless there are any further questions on those items. Hearing none, those are my items. Thank you.
Councilor Hogan.
Thank you, President Hudson. I have item 34, and that is ready.
Councilor Majok.
Thank you, Madam President. Councilor White, you had a question? Are you also?
No, I had several questions. I don't know that I ever got a response.
If send something. If
Who is this?
I am certainly happy to answer any additional questions on this one as well.
so, the initial question was, Councilor White, that to go through the details of what are we paying for, right, Councilor White?
Yes, that's correct.
So, excuse me, MA Pulse essentially runs the police network. The police network is separate from the city's network for obvious reasons of security. The two don't really intersect. And rather than have an in-house IT function, the Syracuse Police Department, honestly, I don't know when, years before my time, made the decision to outsource that IT support. So this is providing all of the IT support services to maintain the SPD's network, and most of its help desk services.
Frank, who is in charge of monitoring or keeping tabs of the work that the consultants are doing? Do we have somebody in-house that is assigned to making sure that they're providing the level of service that we need?
For IT specifically, Counselor?
Yes.
For the city, we do use a number of outside vendors, and that's the IT department, Dave Proack and his team. And there is a lieutenant assigned in the police department.
Okay. And is his sole job IT as it relates to the police department?
In the police department, that, Chief, you might want to.
Good afternoon. Joe Cecil, First Deputy Chief with Syracuse Police. So Mark Warbeck, he's actually a sergeant. He's not only in charge of IT, but also records, property, cameras, a lot of IT stuff, but also records and property. That's not his sole job.
Okay. And so is he, I guess, the primary liaison between these consultants and the police department?
Yes, and he works closely with Dave Proack, too, who's obviously the expert in IT stuff.
And I'm going to ask this again, have we looked at, I understand there's a shortage, apparent shortage of qualified individuals to handle this type of work for the city, but have we looked at providing some sort of in-house solution versus spending money on outside consultants?
We actually have gone the opposite way, Counselor, because it was just more difficult for us to do with the personnel we have, and they don't have the expertise that these companies have. So just recently, for instance, with cops cameras, we actually contracted out so they could begin to monitor and maintain those cameras because we don't have the resources for it. So we've actually gone the opposite way. We would love to have it all in-house with a bunch of experts in-house, but we just don't have the resources to do it.
And when you say resources, are you talking about bodies or money?
Bodies.
Skills too, right, Chief?
What's that?
I mean, skills in this particular type.
Sure, but if we had the bodies, I believe we'd get them trained up and we could get them in-house, but it's bodies.
Do you know when the last time there was a full-time IT person specifically assigned to the police department?
I would say, I'm going back probably 15 years, maybe 14. We had a captain. Once again, though, in the police department, everybody has multiple jobs. We had a captain that oversaw IT. He was also the personnel director. So, but then there was a sergeant under him who handled all the IT stuff. And that was his sole job. So I guess that would be the answer. And that was 14, 15 years ago.
And has there ever been looked into the possibility of bringing in a civilian person to handle those roles?
Well, we do have civilians that handle a lot of our IT stuff, but they're contracted with MA Pulse.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Will be open, Madam President.
Thank you. Item 36 is ready if we don't have any further questions or comments.
Thank you. And with that, I need a motion to adjourn.
So
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Alrighty.